This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, welcome to Asia Training Solutions, like day one session. So, in the demo session, what we saw is that like what are all the topics that we are going to cover, and there are key topics that I covered during the demo session itself. Now we are going to have a little more understanding, like say like performance engineering, why it is actually coming into picture. Because why there are people will ask this question, like why performance tester cannot do certain activity, why performance engineer is required to do this activity. Okay, so first we should have an understanding. Okay, what are all the roles and responsibility done by the performance tester, roles and responsibility done by the performance engineer. Or there are people will ask this question, why don't a developer can become a performance engineer like that. Okay, so all in all we should have an understanding, or we should know the boundary of each and every role basically. What is the role of a developer, what is the role of a performance tester, what is the role of a performance engineer, like that. Okay, that is what the primary discussion that you are going to do. And along with that, if you want to become a performance engineer, it is a roadmap, right? It is a journey. So what we are planning, what are all the things, if you are getting it to know, you will become a performance engineer in the near future. Okay, that is what we are going to see. Say, um, uh, I hope everyone able to see my screen and everyone able to hear my voice properly. Uh, uh, if someone is facing a problem, please let me know, guys. Okay. So basically, what will happen, like in the day-to-day life, a developer, you take the role of a developer. What they will do, they will get the requirement with whatever may be BRD, business requirement document, or SRS, software requirement specifications. Okay, so SRS document or BRD document, whatever they are getting it from the stakeholder, and then they will do the coding. Basically, what they will think in their mind, the code should work, the functionality should work. In that way, in that motto only, they'll write their code. Basically, they will not think about it should be fast, it should not create any resource utilization, it should not create any performance problem. Like that they will not think, because their ultimate goal is they have to complete their task in a right time. They don't want to waste the time. Okay, that is a reason the developer, sometimes what will happen, they will not even do their unit testing properly, because the ultimate agenda is the developer should do a unit testing properly before going into the integration testing, right? That is a life cycle. But in most of the time, what is happening, the developer say that I don't have sufficient time to do unit testing properly. What I thought is that, like, why don't you move the code to the integration phase, so the functional tester or the automation tester can test it and tell me, so that I will make the code changes. That is how they are delegating their work to the testers. Basically, the developer is delegating the work to the testers, and what they are thinking that, instead of I'm spending some time in fine tuning this code, or finding the fault in my code, somebody else can do that activity. Because of that, most of the time, a huge performance issue or production outage is coming, because lack of unit testing is happening. Okay, lack of unit testing. So if the unit testing is done by the developer properly, most of the issues can be avoided. It may be a performance issue, or it may be a functional issue, or whatever the things, if a developer is doing a proper unit testing, it will not be a problem at all. Straight away, you will get a proper standard code. But this is a problem. They'll say, we are working in agile, we are working in DevOps. Because of that, the sprint cycle will be very, very short. The release cycle will be very, very short. Because of that, what is happening? They will not have sufficient time to actually do anything on the application. Because of that, poor code is actually developing. This is the first reason, guys. Okay, poorly written code. Yeah, this is a first reason. Poorly written code. What is that poorly written code? Say say in a team of development team, okay, there are 10 developers are there. It is mixture of like senior and junior developers. The senior developers may be knowing the standards and they are writing the code in such a way that it will not create any functional problem or the performance problem. Okay, but a junior developer who is new to the team, new to this way of writing code, what he will do or he or she will do, they will write a program in such a way it will work. That's all. The fundamental criteria is it will work, but it will not follow the standards. Okay, it will not really follow the standards, like I should not use more of a conditions, I should not use more of a commands in my script, I should not use more of unwanted looping in my script, I should not use unnecessary logic in my script. Like that, they will not follow any procedures or standards. Because of that, what will happen, there is extra overhead to the applications. Because you are doing additional looping means what will happen, there is extra millisecond that you are spending in the application. You are writing too much of commands in the script means what is happening, the engine actually taking more of a time to parse the code basically. Okay, these are the reasons, right? So in that situation, a poorly written code will be a problem. To avoid that, usually what will happen, the senior developers in the team usually takes the responsibility. Whenever junior is actually writing a code, at the end of the day they will review the code and then they will check in the code. Okay, check out the code, because in that way only you maintain standards. But that is not happening in the realistic way. The senior developer or senior in the team, they'll say I have other priorities, I have other works to do, I have some other future release activities are pending. Like that, what they will do, they will not do that code review properly. Because of that reason, the poorly written code is going to the production and it is actually creating a problem. Okay, so this is how a common performance issues are coming. Okay, a poorly written code is a reason for a common performance issues. Okay, say what is that next reason would be, the next reason for a common performance issues would be like load distribution issue. Okay, load distribution issue is nothing but sometimes what will happen, the load balancer configuration is not proper. Okay, the load balancer configuration is not proper. Because of that, either of the say under say like okay, this is how a load balancer is designed means. Okay, if it is connected in a load balancer URL, this is how if it is connected. But you feels like this particular machine is always getting 90 percentage of the CPU. Okay, this is only getting 30 percentage of the CPU. Here only you are getting 10 percentage of the CPU. So basically, what I'm trying to say here, this is like kind of an uneven distribution of the load. Because of that, one node particularly will fail very early because it is already 90 percentage utilization of the CPU, right? So that particular node will go down if you are keep on increasing the load condition. So it is like why? Because it is a poor distribution of the load. If you are not properly configuring your load balancer in such a way, web server configuration level, so what will happen, it will create unnecessary or uneven load to a particular machine instead of evenly distributed across the machine. It what will happen, that particular machine will give you a poor performance issues. Okay, so I'll pass here. Anybody have any question till now, please ask me.
Hello.
Yeah.
Then what are the best practices for the load balancing, or the
Say,
what are the ways to do it right?
yeah, say there are topology understanding should be there. Okay, I think in our early studies we would have done. This is a way that the infrastructure is designed. These are the topological way, star topology, ring topology kind of the topological way we are seeing our network, right? So if you are constructing your infrastructure in such a way that there are load balance are there, fi load balancer, different load balancing conditions are there. So now the recent trend is fi load balancer. Okay, so when we are implementing these load balancer, in that load balancer configuration, there are best practices are there, like you, if you are giving two machine load balancer, it should be go by like say like 50-50 sharing of loading. Or if you are going with the multiple machines, how we are going to do the load balancing condition. Those load balancing mechanism, it is all now literally, like I would say, automated, right? It is like only pre-configuration that you are going to do. Other than that, the load balancer itself will take all the respective load balancing activities. So the basically the support team who are doing the configuration, right? We have to clearly define the setup, like this is how I'm going to do the configuration. This is what the load that I'm expecting, the expected load in the production. Why don't you split those expected load across these machines, so that the performance will not be a problem at all. If you are defining that properly, saying like this is what my expectations, you are setting your expectations with the support team, no, they will properly define the load balancing condition. Okay, uh, based on the infrastructure capacity, based on the number of nodes that you are connecting, this logic will be varying. That is how it is working. You are clear, right? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, thanks for your question. Okay. Say, what could be the other problem? Maybe sometimes it may be third-party system also. Okay. For now, whatever we are doing, right? It is a common performance issues. It's usually common performance issues. Okay. Usually, what will happen when you are doing this kind of activity? What are all the common performance issues will come? Okay, so it may be a third party component also. Okay, um, sometimes this will also be reason for your application performance issue, which depend on the third party component that you are using. Say like some third party system is sending uh, uh, you restricted to third party, because it may be a component or it may be a system also. So basically you are say like you are using a payment gateway, or using some other third party system is sending a data to your system. There may be a possibility, because of that system is slow, you are waiting for the response of that system to come into your application, right? That time your end user will feel that your application is having a poor performance. So make sure it is not only your own code base, it is something depend on the third party also. Say I worked in a application. Okay, I worked in application. There what happened, usually, say I'll tell you, there is a primary system, and then they used to have multiple uh, uh, external system. From each and every external system, they used to get the data. Each and every external system, they used to get the data. Okay, uh, what happened when I was doing the assessment of that application, what I requested to the primary system people, sorry, why don't you use a stubbing concept? Okay, why don't you use a stubbing concept with each and every system, and then we'll find the performance of your own system. Okay, say like there are three systems in this example. I'm saying there are three systems are there. If I stub the three systems, which means stubbing is nothing but statically I'm getting a response from each and every system. What is happening? There are tools are there, guys. Lisa, CA Lisa is a stubbing service virtualization tool. Okay, so when you are doing this stubbing of these system, how it is performing, you will not believe. After stubbing that environment, this application was very fast, very fast when stubbing is happening. But without stubbing, this system usually getting the response time after 8 seconds, after 10 seconds, like that. But without that, it was very fast. It is 3 to 4 seconds we started getting the response time. But it was double when you are going with a third party interaction, because then only we come to know this third party is taking lot of time in processing the data, and the way they are sending the data also is a little what I would say, response intensive, resource intensive responses are coming. Because of that reason, this particular the source system looks to be little poor in performance, but it is not so. It is because of the third party system this application looks to be little poor in the performance. Okay, and then it may be that the next one, it may be a thread related issues. Okay, usually the threads that are running in the system, right, it may be a thread related issue. Okay, the poor performance because of the thread related issue. Basically, we will go in detail when you are going for the thread dump analysis and all. I will show you how a thread can be analyzed, what are all daemon threads, non-daemon threads, like that. I will while we are going for the session, I'll explain you guys like what is that. But on a high note, the thread related issues is nothing but when the developer is writing a code, sometimes they may do something issue. They are giving too much of a sleep, or too much of wait state, or some deadlock happen between one thread to the other. Because of that reason also your application will be hanging. Okay, I don't know, those are working for 10 more than 10 years in this field, this performance field, they knows that they suddenly the screen will be frozen, the screen will be hanging, it will become like white screen suddenly, and you will not do anything further. So that time, what usually the system administrator people or the support people will do, they'll go to the task manager, say they will go like this, like they will go like this. Okay, they will select any process. Okay, just a minute. They'll select any process, they'll right click and they'll create dump file. Okay, with that they used to identify and understand, but this is not going to, this is actually a heap dump. Okay, but when in realistic world, people used to have the commands and all, kill -3, or else you can use JVisual VM, or you can use JConsole, or you can use JProfiler, URKit, like that. Lot of tools are there. With that tools, they used to collect a heap dump or a thread dump. Okay, heap dump or a thread dump. With that, they will understand when that particular screen hanging or frozen or white screen is there. That time, what is happening with respect to the object, what is happening with respect to the thread. That is how people will do the analysis, and then they will come to a conclusion. Okay, this particular thread is a reason, or this particular object is a reason, like that they will come to an understanding, guys. Okay, that is also happened now, also it is happening, but in the traditional way, people used to do that activity. Okay, I'll stop here. Maybe anybody have any question like heap dump or thread dump, or somebody, I don't know what is heap dump and thread dump. Anybody have questions like that, guys, please let me know.
Hello.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So
please.
at what moment you are taking the heat dump? So whenever you are facing an issue, you take a heat for thread dump, or like even before the issue, you take the dump. I'm not sure how. I've not worked on that. That's why.
Yeah, thank you. I'll tell you. Say basically, when there is a issue happened, that say like a screen is spinning for longer time, it did not come back with a response. This is a problem statement. Means that moment that spinning is happening, right? That moment, what people used to do traditionally, I'm saying, they used to keep on taking a dump, 3 snapshot, 5 snapshots like that. They used to take a dump because single snapshot will not be sufficient to identify the issues, guys. That you have to keep in mind. Single snapshot will never help you to do a simulation of a performance issue. You have to keep on taking the dump. You will not believe me. When I was working in a .NET based application, I used to take the dump for whole day, 8 hours, 9 hours. I used to take the heap dump, the dump basically, because you cannot straight away simulate that, because it happened in a particular moment of time. That moment of time you have to reproduce and then take the dump. So that is a really tough job in the traditional way of doing things. But now, guys, it is all very modern trends, modern technology, modern way of doing activities, right? Now it is all little easy because a lot of APM tools are comes into the picture. Because of that, say, if you want to take a heap dump or thread dump, say like I'll tell you a thread dump in App Dynamics, the APM tool called App Dynamics. You can set an alert when there is a breach in the response time, or when there is a breach in certain activity. You can say, you can instruct the tool to take 3 to 5 dumps automatically. You don't want to do that, the tool will take care of it. Okay, so what I'm saying, traditionally only manually you have to go do these, that and all, but nowadays it is all little automated. If you have in your organization, if you have App Dynamics, you can straight away take the thread dump that easily by doing automatic alert systems. Even in Dynatrace you have a heap dump feature. Heap dump in Dynatrace, thread dump feature is not there. You can take the heap dump. Okay, so these tools will help you in getting the heap dump and the thread dump, or else no other go, or you want to take it manually also. Still in JDK, there are utilities are there, right? This JVisual VM or JConsole. Those utilities will help you to take the heap dump and thread dump, and then you have to analyze, guys. Okay, basically taking a heap dump and thread dump, it is a critical task only, but analyzing is that more than that. It is critical, because you need to understand really what is happening with respect to the heap dump and with respect to the thread dump. Okay, so when you are going for our regular the subsequent classes, right, subsequent session, that time I will simulate certain heap issue, or I'll try to simulate a certain thread issue, basically thread issue by running some program in the Eclipse. I will simulate certain thread issues. That time I will show you how to take a thread dump, and then I will explain the thread related issues. Okay, thread related issues. So basically we are going to see that in the subsequent sessions. So answer to your question, it is at the moment when the performance issue is happening, the spinning, hanging, crashing is happening, right? That moment you have to take the snapshots, the dumps continuously, and then analyze the dump and making sure, is that a object level issue or is that a thread level issue, and then make the recommendation on the remedial action you to avoid that issue. Clear? Did I answer your question?
Yes, yes, sir. Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Sharunan, how you'll identify, the spinning and all is happening? You're observing a little bit of slowness in the UI side, or how
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can find it?
Exactly. Yeah, you are correct. In the UI side, you will feel that. In the UI side, sometimes the entire screen will be frozen. Not your mouse, you cannot do any click or anything can be done in the screen. The screen will become frozen, or the screen will become white. White screen will be there. Nothing will be showing. and then your page, in some places your page will be spinning, but nothing else is coming back also. Those are all the symptoms. In that moment you will take the dumps.
Okay. What
Clear?
is the ideal time to collect the dump thread? Suppose it's a thread dump, right? So, how much time duration we need to collect, whether it is 5 minutes or 3 minutes.
You, usually you can take see, I'll tell you one more thing also. Based on the size of the objects that are loaded at that moment, a dump size will be there. Okay, dump size and the time taken for the dump also will differ. Okay, say like at that moment of time, I'm throwing an example. At that moment of time, some 200 MB of files are loading means, okay, that will take little more time for the dump to be taken. To capture the dump, it will take little more time if it is a little lengthier objects that are loaded at that moment of time, right? So it is obvious you take some 2 to 3 dumps within 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes you try to take 2 to 3 dumps. Okay,
Okay.
that will be the optimal case. That will actually capture the issue. Okay, actually in
Sure.
AppDynamics, in AppDynamics every 500 milliseconds they used to take the dump. 500 milliseconds in their settings, you have an option with the gap of 500 millisecond. You can take a snapshot of 3, snapshot of 5, like that. There is a setting available. If you are setting it like that, they'll give a time gap between each and every dump of 500 millisecond, then they'll take the dump. Okay, and then a very important thing for your performance issue is database issue. uh, if you go and do any survey report, the recent industry level performance outage survey report, the maximum contributor is database only. I would say 55% out of the 100% is database only. So we want to make sure whatever the activity or whatever the things that are happening in database should be fine, because it may be because of the query issue, unoptimized query issue, or some resource constraint issue, like that. Lot of things are involved. So make sure the database should not be the culprit for whatever your performance issue that you are facing. So make sure the database should work fine. It will not create any problem, because ultimately all the data intensive scenario that you are doing, if the database is unable to handle, the JDBC connection pool is having a problem, or your query is having a problem, or the infra in which the database is deployed is a problem, or the query, the contribution of query with respect to the CPU is a problem. Lot of things are there. Lot of things are there. Okay, it's all those things you need to take into consideration when we are deploying something into the production. Because if you are not properly doing that activity, say like optimizing the query, or the query is consuming a lot of CPU, or the database where you deployed is having a lot of CPU utilization or memory utilization, like that and all, if it is coming, that is contributing to a performance issue. So make sure the database side or the DBA person, those who are working in that on the ground, they should understand the criticality of this performance issue. They should do an extra effort to avoid this kind of a performance issue. That's where the important thing is there. Okay, and then I would say data growth. Data growth. So what is the data growth? Say I am going to start a retail application. Retail. I'm the stakeholder for the retail application. Means I am expecting 10,000 user in the year of 2020. Okay, 20,000 user in the year of 2021. The data is actually growing. My customer base is increasing. My amount of utilization is increasing. But in that case, if I am not doing investment for my data growth, that the amount of data that is increasing, amount of resource that I am consuming is increasing. That time, if I am not investing much for the infrastructure or the activity that I'm doing, that time I need to face a performance issues. If the data is keep on increasing, and if I'm not taking care of the data growth, that time also that will lead to a performance issue. If the data growth, if you are not properly handling, or you are expecting that it is going to grow, but you are not having a sufficient infrastructure to handle that load, that definitely will lead to a performance issues. Any question guys till now? Yeah. The next may be a memory related issues, guys. This is also very important. Memory related issues. It may be anybody can say what are all the possible memory issues can come, guys? What are all the possible memory issues? Any random answer?
Memory leaks.
Memory leaks, wonderful. Memory
Out
leaks.
of memory.
Yeah, out of memory. Yeah, OOM. Yeah, out of memory is in turn, you can say allocation issue also, right? Allocation issue. And what you can say, caching is also a problem. If you are not proper caching, what will happen? Okay, caching is also a problem. So it could be a memory leak, it may be a allocation issue or out of memory issue, or it may be a caching issue. If you are not properly caching also, that will create a problem. So all these are the memory related issues, right? Okay, what will I do? I'll explain garbage collection understanding for you guys. Okay, garbage collection. Okay, say uh, anybody can say what are the two important memory space that it is there in the heap area? What are the two things? Anybody can say what are the two important memory areas?
Eden Survivor.
That is inside the young generation. Okay, there are two things are there: young generation, old generation memory. Okay, in the heap area. Okay, in that as you mentioned correctly, in the young generation, inside that you have Eden and Survivor. Okay, so this is Eden, and this is S0 S1 Survivor space. Okay, guys, you guys can keenly observe now. This is very important topic, because you have to do in your application. You have to make sure that you are able to understand this concept, so that you can simulate this in your application, so that going forward, not till now, if you are not doing also, going forward you will get the maximum benefit of understanding this concept. Okay, that is the reason I'm explaining this. So basically, uh, in our subsequent class also, I'm going to explain what is JVM, what is JVM architecture, everything we will discuss, guys. For now, I'm going to explain the garbage collection concept. Okay, how garbage collection is actually working. Okay, basically, say whenever you are accessing your application, for you it is accessing an application. For the machine, for the Java code, basically what will happen, if there is a JVM. Okay, JVM, Java virtual machine. Inside that, this heap space is there. That is actually categorized into young generation and old generation. What will happen when you are accessing the application? The objects are allocated, right? The objects are created. So what will happen? It will basically consumed inside the hidden space. First, whenever you are accessing the application, it will go and consume inside the hidden space. Okay. The objects are continuously allocated inside the hidden space. At one point of time, there will not be sufficient memory in the hidden space. Okay, there will not be sufficient memory in the hidden space. That time, what this mechanism will do, it has to clear the memory. Basically, it has to clear the memory, then only new objects can be come in, right? So what will happen? It will basically do what? Anybody can tell me what it will do? Basically, it will trigger a minor GC. It will trigger a minor GC. Okay, minor garbage collection. This is called as minor garbage collection. Okay, so what will happen if you are initiating a minor garbage collection? Okay, the garbage collection mechanism, what it will do, it will go and check each and every object which are referenced and which is not referenced. Okay, which are referenced and which is not referenced. In this case, there are 4 objects are there. It is going and checking. There are objects are not referenced. Okay, so what it will do, it will basically clear the not referenced object, unreferenced object. Okay, the unreferenced objects will be cleared. Okay, once the unreferenced objects are cleared, it will do a compacting of this memory, and what it will do, it will move the referenced objects into a survivor 0. Okay, with the age of 1, with the survivor age of 1, because it survived once, right? It survived once, so the age will be for these survived objects will be 1. Age is 1. Okay, so now what will happen? Again, the objects will be accumulated in the hidden space. Again, usual when the application somebody is accessing, no, it will be accumulated in the hidden. Again, there is a memory problem. There is no sufficient memory available. Again, what will happen, guys? Again, it will trigger a minor GC. This time, what it will happen? It will check, say, like which one is not referenced. It will say this is not referenced and this is not referenced. In some case, it will say this is not referenced also. Okay, that time what will happen? It will again clear the unreferenced objects. Unreferenced objects will be cleared from the heap memory. Okay, then what will happen? The remaining survived objects will be moved to where? This time it will move to S1. This object also will be moved to S1. Okay, so what will happen? The age of these objects are 1. The age of these objects are 1, and age of this object is 2, because it is survived 2 times. Because it survived from here to here, right? It survived from 2 times. Till now, any question, guys? Okay, so again the objects will be coming into the system. Okay, again the objects will be coming into the system, and then it will check it will again do the minor GC. Like that, this cycle will be continuously happening. The age also will be increasing from 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. The swapping between survivor 0 and survivor 1 will be keep on happening. Okay. When there is a counter called promotion, object promotion. Okay. When you can set it in the JVM argument itself. Okay. That time, if it is reaching that promotion cycle counter, say the default count is 15. Okay. Say if you are giving a 15 one, when the cycle reaches the counter of 15, no, what will happen? Those objects, sorry, when some object is reaching that counter of 15 means that object will be go to old generation, guys. That particular object will be going to old generation. Okay, like this it will also keep on doing that activity. Because of that, the object will be moving from young generation to old generation continuously. It is moving. Okay, at one point of time what will happen, the old generation will also become full. Okay, that time there is a concept called major GC can be triggered, or you can say like full GC can be triggered. Full GC is nothing but combination of minor GC and major GC. Okay, combination of minor GC and major GC. If it is only happening in old generation, that is called as major GC. Okay, if it is happening both the places, if it is happening combination, minor GC will be happening in young generation, major GC will be happening in old generation. Because of that, the memory will be free everywhere. If the garbage collection is happening, the memory will be free for young generation and memory will be free for old generation. But one thing you have to keep in mind, guys, whenever a garbage collection is happening, that is called a stop the world scenario. They'll call it as stop the world scenario, which means that nothing will be happening in the application. Nothing will be happening in application when the garbage collection is happening. Stop the world is nothing but nothing will be happening. No thread will be actively doing. But nowadays we have the algorithm. But usually the understanding is that the activity will not be happening when there is a garbage collection mechanism is running. Stop the world scenario. So now you think it like this: if you are having more of a garbage collection, your application is impacting or not? If you have more of garbage collection, your application is impacting. Because of that, your end user is also impacting. They will feel some slowness, some but internally what is happening, it is doing the garbage collection very frequently. So if the garbage collection is happening very frequently, means what is that meaning? Either it may be a young generation memory allocation issue or old generation memory allocation issue, right? Okay, that is a reason there are JVM arguments are there, guys. Min heap size, max heap size, perm size declaration, like that. Lot of JVM arguments are there. If you are declaring that, you can allocate the memory in such a way you will not get more of a minor GC, more of a major GC. That will impact your application performance. Anybody have any question, guys, in this understanding? This may be those who are attending performance engineering interviews, maybe this will be the primary question people will ask. This, how do you know how the garbage collection mechanism is working?
I have a question.
Minor GC also will call the stop the world scenario. I mean,
every
GC
GC.
whenever.
Yeah, every GC.
So I have a question, like how we come to know what is the heap memory setup is ideal for an application?
If your if your RAM size is 8 GB, no, you take 2 GB of heap size. 1/4.
So
1/4 of the physical memory is a logical memory. Yeah.
So that is universal for regardless of what is the memory size, right?
Regardless of memory size means what you are saying? I told that memory size of the RAM.
Okay. So if it is like even 20 GB RAM, then 1/4 will be heap.
I do not know 20 GB is a logical answer. It is 16 GB.
Okay, like 16, then 1/4 will be 4 GB will be for heap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And for GC collection, right? So is there any standard like
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. See, that is what I touched the important thing now, the garbage collection. But when you are going for our regular session, no, there is a serial GC, parallel GC, and concurrent mark sweep GC, and then G1 GC. The Shenandoah is there, but Shenandoah people are not. There is one more GC came into the picture nowadays, Shenandoah DC, but people are not that actively using. But people will predominantly focus on these four. In that, this G1 GC is nowadays famous. Okay, first garbage collection, that is the name of it. And there are people will use CMS also. It is all case to case based on the application requirement people are using it, but I would say G1 GC is very famous nowadays. Okay,
so
this is
what is
this
the
is what your question was. This is what your question also, right?
yeah, so what is the ideal interval for GC collection?
See, that is what your this minor GC or major GC, whatever we are talking about, right? It should never be more than the milliseconds. It should be like, if it is 50 milliseconds, 70 milliseconds, then it is actually super good. Okay, your application is super good, because because the GC, whatever that we are talking as minor GC and major GC, right? It is all measured with GC pass time. Okay, GC pass time. Maybe I'll write like this: GC pass time. this this is a metric which is going to measure um, the performance, right? Okay, the performance. So this GC pass time should not be more. Okay, if you are analyzing your own application, say like there are JVM arguments are there. Just a minute. Hmm, I will show this, don't worry. That today you asked the question.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry. So I will show the entire installation configuration things and all. Since because the question came, like I'll show an example. So when you're this is a catalina.bat file, which is a startup file for Apache Tomcat server. Okay, inside that you can see there are JVM arguments. This will not be there by default, guys. Please be aware. It is we are doing the configuration. I added this configuration. So in that, if you are saying like heap dump on out of memory error, means it will take a heap dump whenever there is out of memory error. And then I configured a GC path with wherever whenever I'm running a test, it will try to take the GC information, and then GC details everything. I instructed to print the value. Okay, so basically if you are collecting these information, and you have lot of tools and utilities that are available, using that you can get the data. Okay, say just a minute, which path I configured it. It is D server and Apache Tomcat server inside the logs. Yeah, you can see here. Okay, or you can dedicatedly write a log also. This is not like you have to always write inside this or what. You don't want to do that. You can separately write your folder and then keep the logs. But I would say writing this log is very, very useful. I'll tell you when we are going for the subsequent classes, right? That time I'll show you why is that very, very important, because which will give you lot of additional insights. Because till day, I don't know, those who are working in performance testing or whatever the activity that you are doing, no, till day you are observing your application in one layer. Means after understanding the GC, after understanding the thread heap, no, you will approach your application in a little different way, and you will try to identify lots and lots of performance issues, performance recommendations that you can give. That is the reason we are learning this entire thing. So going forward, after knowing this, you will tell to the respective stakeholder, can you do this so that this will happen, can you do that so that you can understand this. Like that, you have an understanding to explain to them. That is a main benefit that we are going to get if you are doing this activity. Okay, what will I do? I'll run a test. That time maybe we will get the logs quickly, because for now there is no load in the system. Because of that, there is no data populated. But during our session, what will I do? I'll trigger a load that will actually quickly create lot of minor GCs and major GCs. With that, I'll explain you how minor GC, major GC, what is a minor GC past time, what is a major GC past time, how many times minor GC happen, how many times major GC happen. Because if you think like this, major GC means longer past time, the past time will be very very large if the major GC is happening. So what is that ultimate goal? You should avoid many major GC to happen. That is objective, right? So in order to do that, how we are going to allocate your heap size in such a way? Say there are people will say, if it is having GC means what is the problem, sir? Straight away increase the heap size, right? But I'll tell you like this. I will tell with an example. Okay, say an example. If the heap size is only 2 GB, guys, only 2 GB. In that, if you are facing any memory issue, means 2 GB, it will take certain amount of time to clear the GC, right? Say an example, it is something like 200 milliseconds. 2 GB, if it is taking this much time, somebody will say, why don't you increase to 10 GB, the heap size to 10 GB? Okay, 10 GB you are increasing. Okay, good, I understand you increase the memory. But suddenly if the memory is full for that 10 GB also, that 10 GB memory also fill, means till that time maybe you will not get minor GC or whatever. Once it is filled, means what will happen? It will take lot of time to clear the garbage collection. It will take lot of time. Maybe till the moment it to reach the maximum size, it will not trigger any minor GC, major GC. But once the memory is full, means it will take maximum time to clear the GC. Maximum time to clear the GC. That is the reason you have to optimally create your heap size. It is not too high, it should not too low. You have to maintain a logical heap definition, so that your application will not have too frequent minor GC or too frequent major GC, or over time for the major GC to happen. So that is a way you have to do your garbage collection mechanism to be working, guys. Any question till now, guys?
One more question, like, so this garbage collection, is it same for, I mean, for Java, we know that there is garbage collection, but how about .NET application? Is
.NET
there any,
also garbage collection is there. They'll call it as Gen 0 garbage collection, Gen 1, this is Gen means generation, okay? Generation 0, generation 1 and generation 2. Okay, generation 2. So what is happening here in Gen 0, it is a short-lived, medium-lived, long-lived objects. Okay, that is how they categorized in .NET. Okay, Gen 0, Gen 1, Gen 2, short-lived, medium-lived, long-lived objects. This long-lived objects means you have to logically decide whether I want to have long-lived objects for long-lived objects, or I have to quickly do the garbage collection to remove the things. So you are basically, this is how the graph should be. Okay, if your Gen 0 should be upper trending, Gen 1 should be like this, Gen 0 to be little lower. If it is other way, some application, if the Gen 2 is upper trending and Gen 1 and Gen 0 is like this, means you should take a look like why this Gen 2 is always contributing lot of memory. That you have to discuss with the developer. Your generation 2 is lot of memory contribution. Go back, you need to logically think like, do we require to maintain the long lived objects for longer period of time? Okay, and then you have to logically do the arrangement so that your memory clearing will be happening. So that say you think like I am pulling a information in Facebook. In Facebook, I'm pulling a information related to the name of Saravanan. Okay, till what moment I want to stay make that information available is a logical decision, right? I should not keep the data for 1 year. What is the purpose of making Saravanan information for so much of a time, right? So you have to take a logical decision. Within 5 minutes I'm going to clear, or within 15 minutes, or within 1 hour, like that. So that is how this garbage collection mechanism is working in .NET. Clear?
Yeah, so for Java, we are using JProfile or JConsole, JVisual, those tools, or maybe we are using Kill3 PID, right? So
Yeah.
is that so? What will be the process for .NET?
.NET, you can straight away go to the perfmon. No, in perfmon you have perfmon running in your machine, right? Go and type like this.
So this Parkmon, we need to set the Parkmon agent to application server.
Wherever you require to monitor the application, whichever the
Okay.
place. Or nowadays, how I would say people are going with a plan B, not a plan. What you are saying is a plan A. Okay, people are going with plan B. They'll say, I am going to, how I can do a remote monitoring and all. That is how people started thinking. This stuff.
So suppose my application is in test environment when I'm testing. So if I want to monitor that, then my Parkmon agent should be in the QA environment only, right?
Yeah.
And like normally application support team or network team can help for agent setup, or like I have to do myself.
This perfmon, you can do, no? This very easy configuration.
Okay, but
This
sometimes
perfmon is very easy. Okay,
yeah.
I got your question. I got the essence of your question. See, sometimes the infrastructure people will not allow the performance tester or anybody to do any configuration in the system. That time, no other go. You have to instruct them, prepare a document or send a mail to them. This I want. With respect to memory, I want this. With respect to CPU, I want this. With respect to thread, I want this. Like that, you can logically define your. See, when you are going for our infrastructure monitoring, I will be explaining this in detail, guys. Don't think like why I'm explaining this like little precise way. Don't worry, there is a dedicated session for the Linux monitoring and the Windows monitoring. That time I will tell you how to create a data set, how to store the data, how to visualize the data. Like that I will explain. Don't worry. Okay, that time there is a separate session. But for now, answer to your question, uh, uh, there are infrastructure people will not allow the anybody to do anything in the system. That time you have to instruct them to collect the data, and then you can utilize for your investigation purpose. Okay.
Yeah, so you're talking about also plan B, right? What is that?
Yeah, no, plan B is that like there are nowadays latest things are coming. Say you can trigger a request. That request will triggers the agent in the server. That agent will collect the data and give it back to you. I'll say in a simple term, you can use Dynatrace or AppDynamics kind of a tool, which will actually instead of going inside the box and do that activity, it is externally injecting the agent and then taking the data. Able to understand? See what is happening, the infrastructure people will say, if you are creating this perfmon counter in my server, it will accumulate certain memory, that will be a overhead to my system, that has to be archived. If I am not doing the archive, the system will be crashing over the period of time. So don't do that. That is how people will say. But answer to those questions, now what is happening, these Dynatrace or AppDynamics tools, what they are doing, they are injecting the agent. That the agent is actually triggering this perfmon counter. Through that agent, they are collecting the data and they are displaying it in AppDynamics or Dynatrace kind of a tool, so that the data storage is not within the system. It is externally injected. Able to understand?
Yeah, so basically I can tell the Dynatrace team so that they can actually do this kind of setup to collect
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it does.
Instead of you are doing, the tool is going to do. The tool is going to collect the metric. That is what is happening. Okay, but in QA environment and all, I don't think this kind of a restriction will be there. But in production environment, if you really want to do any kind of a monitoring, that time definitely there will be a restriction. You cannot store any data, not even a single line of code. You cannot inject anything in the production environment. That way, this Dynatrace and AppDynamics will be very useful. In QA environment, you yourself can do the configuration. That it will not be a problem at all.
So I have another question. That this question maybe is like kind of silly question, but I have confusion. So normally some company they have a dedicated environment for performance testing, but some other company they have a shared environment, right? Shared
Mhm,
QA environment. So everybody is working there. So
mhm.
suppose my application is in that shared environment, and I am doing testing maybe off hour when nobody using. So in that case, if I take this kind of snap and all those things, so how much valid that matrix will be?
This is not your problem alone. I will call it as Ferdos, right? Ferdos. This is
Yeah.
not your problem alone. In industry, many QA environments are shared environments only, because they don't want to invest much on the QA environment. They'll invest in the production environment, but it will help you. It will definitely help you. Uh, Not on the infrastructure level, on the application level, it will definitely help you. Infrastructure level, anyways, it is a shared environment. Ultimately, it will show you the CPU utilization, memory utilization, little on a higher range only when you are doing this kind of an activity. But you definitely do. Then only you know the pre-activity CPU utilization, post-activity CPU utilization, and the delta will be your application CPU utilization. You able to understand what I'm saying?
Oh, so before running test, I can take some
Ah,
like CPU memory
yeah,
extract, then later after test also I see the difference.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Got it.
That is how everyone is doing, but the problem is, you cannot 100 percentage too much confident that whatever I'm doing is right, because you are saying pre-configuration, post-configuration. Sometimes who knows, the shared environment guy also who is running the load testing means that's all. There will be a calculation delta will be there. So make sure you are running on the on off season time. Nobody is accessing that application. That time whatever the logic that I told will be helpful for you. Clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Is,
Yeah.
is Saravanan, you are saying about G0, G1, different kind of garbage collectors, right? G1,
Hmm.
G0, G1, G2.
Yeah.
So what are those actually? Generally, we have Edens, no, even no young generation, old generation, right? Eden survivors,
No.
and after that, it will comes to old. I mean, okay, it will comes to old generation, right? So there, if any, the memory will fill in the particular slot, then GC will trigger, right?
Hmm.
So that is, in old generation memory, the GC will perform, and for young and Edens also. But overall, right, in system wise, garbage collector will trigger based on the algorithms which we are implementing, right? So in that, so what is the G0, G1, G2, these kind of things? So I have doubt on that actually. So could you
Yeah. Yeah.
please?
You can see the screen now. This three things that I added now. Maybe I'll try to.
Okay, what's the counter for that?
Gen 0, Gen 1, Gen 2. .NET CLR
Okay.
memory. Okay, you can see Gen 0 is on top. You can see that Gen 0 is on top. That green color line is the middle, and then the blue color line. This is what I showed in the diagram also. This diagram I was trying to tell you the similar one. Say here the short-lived objects are high. Okay, the medium-lived objects are in the middle, and then long-lived objects at the bottom. Okay, so this behavior looks to be healthy, right? Steady pattern. There is no glitch. Steady pattern is there. You are not finding any difficulty. But in your realistic world, when you're accessing your application, when this graph is vice versa, Gen 2 is actually on the top, Gen 1 in the middle, Gen 0 in the bottom, means that time only I told you Gen 2 is nothing but long-lived objects. Long-lived objects means why is that long-lived? For longer, it is contributing maximum and it is also living for longer time. That is how the investigation will be there in .NET application. Okay, it should not, you see, long-lived objects means, say an example, I told you the same thing. You pulled information related to Saravanan. Saravanan information is why he has to live for longer period of time. You have to take a logical decision. Based on that, if you are doing the garbage collection, Saravanan information within 2 to 5 minutes, if it is going, means the Gen 2 garbage collection graph will not be at the top, it will be at the bottom. So that is the way you have to handle it. Clear?
Okay.
So maybe guys, with this we'll wrap up for the day 1 session of our performance engineering session. Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining in the weekend. Also you joined the sessions. Like thanks for your interest. Those who are interested to proceed with the session or the further information, please reach out to Kumar sir for the further information. You can reach out to Kumar for additional information related to when the next session, what will be the details for login into this session. Okay, so thanks for giving me this opportunity. Thanks everyone for joining this day 1 session. Thanks all. Bye bye.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.